Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are in the world joining us this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate you spending some time with us today. So my name is Chris Rogers. I'm a product marketing manager here at HYCU. So today we're going to be talking about Dell and HYCU and the smartest way to protect Nutanix. But before we kind of dive into the agenda and all those sorts of things, just a little bit of housekeeping from me. So everyone will receive the recording after the webinar's finished. So that question always gets asked in the chat. So yes, you will be able to get that. It will also be available on demand on the HYCU website. So if your colleagues haven't seen it, or whatever else you want to watch it over again and see what I had to say, or what one of my guests had to say, then yeah, you'll be able to find that on the HYCU website post event. Feel free to use the chat boxes and the Q&A box, and make sure that you're asking as many questions as possible. It makes my life a lot easier when you do that. To make sure it's more interactive. We can kind of discuss what you want to discuss rather than what's on my slides. And that's pretty much it. So hopefully I'm going to be joined by a guest. I think we're having a couple of Zoom issues right now. Unless Aimie, you're with me. Oh, Aimie, you are with me. Amazing, perfect. So,
Yes.
Aimie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. My name's Aimie Coole and I work for Dell Technologies. I sit in the EMEA Technology Office, specializing in data protection and cyber resiliency.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Aimie. Thank you very much for that. So yeah, so we're going to be talking about HYCU and Dell today. And pretty much around the topic of Nutanix data protection and kind of the smartest way to do it, really. So let's dive into the agenda real quick. This is kind of a loose agenda. I put this together about an hour or so ago, just on the agenda page, just so we kind of knew roughly what we are talking about. So we've got the HYCU overview, the HYCU and Dell for Nutanix workload, the increasing in simplicity and efficiency, the security angle, the HYCU and Dell value and the promise, the modern data estate. If we have time, I'd like to jump in and show you a quick demo. And then obviously we have time for Q&A afterwards. So you know who I am, Chris Rogers, and I'm delighted to be joined by Aimie. So let's dive into some content. So you may not have heard of HYCU, but we're actually a relatively large company. So we've been around for 8 or 9 years now. We are the number one data protection platform for Nutanix workloads. And our platform is called our cloud. So HYCU our cloud, you can see in the orange lovely there. So we have a deep integration with Nutanix. We have validated blueprints and designs. So you can kind of guarantee yourself that when you're using HYCU and Nutanix together, you're getting the best possible experience, the best possible integration there is. And we talk about customer experience and customer outcomes. You can see that our net promoter score is incredibly high, especially for the data protection space. We have an NPS score of above 90, so 91. I think actually I got told last week it might be 94, but on my slide it says 91, so we'll stick with 91. And then we've got the security angle as well, which I'm going to go into a little more detail in some few slides later on. And then if you look at the circle with the big thing in the middle there, that's the badge of honor that we have. So AHV integrated, so integrated into the Nutanix estate. We hold many of those for different workloads, and you can see all the different workloads around the edge of the circle there that we do cover. So not just about virtualization and AHV or ESX on top of Nutanix, we cover that as well, but all the other areas that Nutanix have in their portfolio as well. And then if we look at some of the sample HYCU customers, so you see here, there's ones from all different regions, all different verticals, all different sizes of organizations as well, and probably some logos and maybe some you don't as well. The biggest one I want to talk about in the middle here, which I've left blank, is actually Nutanix. So Nutanix IT protect their own workloads using HYCU. So if you think if they thought there was a better, more integrated, better solution for Nutanix workloads in the marketplace, they would be using that. They don't. They use HYCU. They've been a happy HYCU customer for numbers of years, moving onwards. So hopefully that gives everyone on the call a bit of peace of mind that we are the number one for Nutanix, and it really speaks volume. And the vendor themselves use Nutanix for their own workloads. And then this is where I want to start and ask Aimie some questions about Nutanix and kind of like the landscape and things like this. And so the Nutanix journey, typically, we see people already having a hypervisor strategy in place, or they've had one. Virtualization isn't new. It's been around for a long time now. Hopefully, it's not new to anyone. If it is, I've just rocked your world about this virtualization thing. But most people are potentially moving to Nutanix or potentially looking for a move to Nutanix. So So Amy, look, what do you see in the marketplace as why people have chosen Nutanix?
From a Dell perspective, as you said, customers are starting to look at different options. Obviously, we had the Broadcom acquisition, which has prompted some of our customers to start looking at other hypervisors, solutions, services. It could be, hybrid. It could be in the cloud. I think with Nutanix, it has established a very strong brand, and they don't just offer virtualization. They can offer a lot more, like databases. We can see it there on the screen, can't we?
Yeah.
Um, I would class it as, an enterprise product. I think that customers are starting to look at what's next. They want to have like flexibility. They want to be
Mhm.
able to choose different services and integrate with other solutions as well. And I think that Nutanix can offer that as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you on that. Yeah. Virtualization is kind of like it used to be the whole the whole thing, right? It used to be, everyone's estate was, maybe it was 95% with a bit of physical left over, but now it's becoming less about the virtualization platform, more about, the wider platform and what it can do. And, I speak to customers a lot, and when I say, why did you choose? Obviously, price comes down to it, and, economical pressures and those types of things, but also like simplicity and kind of that real strategy of actually being able to be extensible out into the cloud and other places as well. Exactly as you said, being the flexible, avoiding lock-in, using modern applications, so like Kubernetes or containerization or cloud or whatever else it is that it offers. But Nutanix doesn't just have that one piece of its armory. It has multiple different angles, and yeah, often simplicity, efficiency, all those types of things come into a conversation as well. And then when we look at data protection, um, again, when we've been discussing this with customers and what here in the field, again, people are moving from other alternatives, or even if they're a greenfield side, right? They've heard of all the big players in the marketplace, but typically most of those well, I don't know, typically most of those vendors in the marketplace wer- weren't weren't designed for Nutanix from the ground up, like HYCU was. So HYCU was our first ever product, the first ever workload we supported was Nutanix, and that's carried on. So Nutanix really is in our DNA. Most of them were designed for VMware or designed for even platforms before VMware. So Windows and Linux on physical, etc. So they've been designed for something else and then been retrofitted for Nutanix workloads, right? So you don't get the same level of integration, you don't get the same level of um, kind of the deep tech. You don't get the same level of experience that you do from a haiku, for instance. Typically, those are going to be slow to deploy, scale, and recover, and quite often they require a lot of people to manage. Is this kind of what you see in the market when you kind of speak to your customers, Amy, and kind of is this kind of ring true? It's not just a myth that we're seeing. We are seeing people like porting over their old technologies and then realizing it doesn't quite work quite as well as it did with the VMware as such, right?
Yeah, I think so because there was such a primary focus on VMware, um, for probably like the last 10 years, really. So now backup vendors are going out there, they're looking at different hypervisors that they need to support. A lot of these backup vendors aren't building their code from the ground up. So yeah, there are going to be challenges along the way, if we should say. And I think, one of the main advantages that HYCU have is that close relationship with Nutanix and the focus around the development for HYCU from day one was always Nutanix. Um, so I would be, very confident if it was myself deploying HYCU to back up my Nutanix environment.
Yeah, exactly that, and you hit on a major point that I might have a slide later on, but let's discuss it now whilst we're on it. Yeah, that kind of close development. So actually, when we started working with Nutanix and developing our product, we've actually co-developed alongside Nutanix. So when we delivered the first of many things for Nutanix that we're first and best in the market for, we actually go to them and say, hey, we're building this. What have you got? Well, how can you help us? All those types of things. And then vice versa, they actually come and ask us. So for their change tracking API for their files, so Nutanix files, they actually asked us to help with the API because they wanted us to know how backup vendors would utilize it. So we helped design that from ground up as well. So it really is a two-way relationship, and we have that alignment from development, from a product, from a marketing, from a sales, and a go-to-market engine as well. So we really are driving that ship forward in the same direction alongside Nutanix as well. So, as I mentioned before, purpose-built data protection for your whole Nutanix estate, built upon HYCU, R Cloud, and Dell Data Domain. So, what can we do with R Cloud and Nutanix? So, if you look at typically what we have here, so the application discovery, so we have a patented application discovery process, which means we can go into your applications without any agents, I might add. So, agents are not something that HYCU uses at all in any of its data protection um, software. So even for physical servers, we don't use agents. We hate them. We don't like them. They cause problems and they cause ill effects. So we have a patented discovery tool which goes out, discovers your workloads, discovers the applications, bring them in, and then you can then customize your data protection depending on what we found, right? So if it's a SQL database, it needs to be different from an Oracle, from a MySQL, whatever, etc. And then obviously we have the backup and recovery piece, your bread and butter. Disaster recovery built into the platform also. Obviously, cyber resilience, that's kind of the number one thing that whenever I've been in conversations with customer, we talk about backup and the conversation really quickly spins to cyber and ransomware and how can you protect me from that. Mobility and migrations, again, one of the key pieces that Aim mentioned there is, about avoiding vendor locking, make sure they have flexible options moving forward. How could they move platforms? How can they move, migrate, mobilize data when they need to? So we have that available in our platform. Long-term retention. Fortunately, we can't get away from storing data. We're storing more data than we ever have done. Rules apply depending on what industry you're in. That could be, medical or financial or in the building regulations. Those sorts of things, you have to store it for 7, 9, 11, 50, 200 years, whatever, whatever the regulations decide. You have to store that data somewhere. So it's about storing that effectively and in the best place possible. We have a great security and compliance story, again, depending on what industry you're in. But even if you're not in a regulated industry, a lot of these regulations, so like DORA, for instance, in the UK and the rest of Europe, it's a real lighthouse for even those non-regulated industries to kind of be like, what does good look like? What should I try and aim for, even though it's not mandated by my organization? What could I do to achieve that similar standard? And even if then you are in a financial industry, you have to abide by DORA, right? So how can you make sure you're in compliance the whole time? And then if you've got data protection at the edge, so edge data is becoming, actually a webinar on this last week, data protection at the edge. So check that out if you are interested in edge data or robo sites, but making sure that that is not a second class citizen and that data is still as important as stuff that's in your DCs. So as I mentioned, we are the leader in Nutanix data protection. So how do we kind of sum up number one, right? So we have the broadest coverage. So we cover pretty much everything that you could do in Nutanix. So from its AHV and also ESX on top of Nutanix if you want to do that as well. Their cloud workloads, so NC2, remote office, branch office, metros, objects, NDB for databases, files, volume groups, you name it, HYCU can cover it across that Nutanix estate. We were purpose built for Nutanix and we're highly secure as well, which I'll go into a little bit more detail later on. We have no agents to install, as I mentioned. We're integrated with Prism and Prism Central, as you'd expect, and we use the Nutanix native APIs to do all of our actions. And then we have this unique relationship with Nutanix, which I've briefly explained, but I like to sum it up in three ways. So we pioneered the past, right? We pioneered Nutanix data protection when they were a very small, challenger to VMware, if you will, like very small, not in the mainstream as they are today. We decided that that was the workload that we want to focus on and their customers, and we help them get to enterprise level data protection. We protect the present. So anything you want to do on Nutanix today, we can help you protect and secure that data and forge the future. Wherever Nutanix go in the future, whatever they bring out, whatever advancements they bring out, we'll be right behind them protecting the data that they put into their platforms and their customers use us for. So you can guarantee that you can protect your investment, not only with Nutanix, but also with HYCU as well. And then we've got the HYCU and Dell high-level architecture. So if we look at this actually, Aimie, why don't you take this one as it's the Dell slide, and you're going to do a much better job of explaining what all these power power acronyms on the screen mean. So yeah, why don't you go ahead and take this one, and we can chat about it afterwards.
Okay, thanks, Chris. At Dell, we have partnered with HYCU, and we chose HYCU, for multiple reasons, but the technologies complement each other very, very well. And we have a broad ecosystem, as many of you will know at Dell. And one of the products within our data protection portfolio is PowerProtect Data Manager. And we also have PowerProtect Data Domain. And PowerProtect Data Domain is the foundation to our cyber resiliency portfolio. So if we have a backup environment that we're designing or architecting, data domain is always going to be the foundation, and it will be the storage repository within our cyber recovery solution as well. So we have partnered with HYCU, and they have given us lots of development super fast. So they've been fantastic when it comes to integrating HYCU with PowerProtect Data Domain. And we have lots more to come on the roadmap. So what does that mean? What's the value? It means that we can use HYCU backup software to back up your Nutanix environment, or it could be other workloads, and we will then send that data to PowerProtect Data Domain. I'll go into the security benefits around data domain on another slide. But just a high level overview, PowerProtect Data Domain comes in a physical appliance. It also comes as a virtual edition that you can deploy in the cloud. We have our Cyber Recovery Vault, and again, that comes in two different flavors, on-premise and in the cloud. Now, we have thousands of cyber recovery vaults out there in the field today. And we have some of our tier one accounts that have got on-premise big stacks of our cyber recovery solutions. And I would probably say no cyber recovery vault is the same. We design the cyber recovery vault for each individual customer to meet their business requirements. So we will assist with the design, creating runbooks, understanding the recovery process, how we can get the business back up and running as quickly as possible. And we have a fantastic service team that can step in and act as a consultant for our customers. So together, HYCU and Dell can offer the full package when it comes to our cyber recovery messaging at Dell. And there's only more and more that's going to come in the future. Today, we support the Cyber Recovery Vault, and we are looking to support CyberSense, our analytics software, in the future as well. And all of the basics are there, which you would expect in a backup environment today, like immutability, MFA, dual authentication. We also have a secure system clock on the data domain. So together we can create and complete that cyber message.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Amy. Thanks for running us through that. So, yeah, well, I just want to echo what Amy said there. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, walk into a conversation with a customer, hey, it's pure backup. We're talking to the backup guys, right? But every time we get taken down the cyber route, it's the number one threat for organizations. It's the thing that causes the most pain, right? The CISOs are worried because now they're personally liable for stuff being happened. It's literally the law to protect your data against these against these things now. So when we're talking about cyber, there isn't really many people in the cyber game who have a better story and a better reputation than Dell with their cyber vault. So it really is a great solution joined up. But then even if you're not ready for a cyber vault, right, you can start with just HYCU and data domain. You get all the benefits of having that secure platform. You don't have to, invest fully into the cyber vault story straight away. But at some
Yeah.
point, everybody's going to want to go down the vault route because it is, that minimum viable business. You need to get that up and running, and it needs to be in the most secure place possible because, when a ransomware attack does happen, we have to assume that everything's going to get blown away, and we just left with this one little piece of vault, and we have to build back from there, right? That's kind of
Yeah,
like the
absolutely. And
story.
I think what you've just said there is key because it's understanding that you may have a two-copy solution, production and DR, where you've got two copies of your backup data. And when we talk about cyber recovery, we are focused around a restore solution. So it's going to enable you to be able to restore if you have an attack. So it is the last line of defense. Think of it as your golden copy of data. Hopefully, you never have to invoke and actually bring it back in. But yeah, it's there to enable a faster recovery because we have secured it, we have air gapped the copy of data, and it will enhance your cyber resiliency restore process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. So kind of like to, we've got the cyber piece, and then on this slide, I just want to make sure, so all those Nutanix workloads on the left-hand side, we can essentially copy to anywhere you want. So this slide essentially here, we can go direct to object. So Dell ECS, for instance, we can go directly into that object store. So if you wanted to skip out a DD, whatever reason, I don't know why you would, but you might go straight to object. You can do that. You can go straight to a cloud appliance with DDVE. You could, sorry,
Just
go on, Amy.
just going back to that point there. So we can go direct to object with HYCU, and we could go direct to ECS. Now there would have to be a use case where you will go outside of the data domain. It could
Mhm.
be you have a long-term retention, or it could be data that just doesn't dedupe very well,
Mm,
and it
yeah,
wouldn't
great point.
really be cost effective to put it on the data domain. However, you also have to think about when it comes to our cyber recovery solution, the foundation is data domain,
Yep.
and how it integrates with the cyber recovery software is at an M-tree level, and that's a data domain storage unit. So if you want to be able to bring in your critical data into a cyber recovery vault, it has to land on a data domain first.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So I think we've got a great story all round, so the whole of the Dell portfolio is pretty much available to the HYCU and Nutanix customers. Essentially what we're saying is, land it where you want, but get the guys from Dell involved. They'll be able to tell you all the nitty gritty, like the stuff I don't really know that well, like exactly that, the M tree stuff goes over my head. No. But those guys are going to know exactly what suits what's best, and that's why HYCU and Dell have got this partnership so we can give the best possible outcomes to customers. Essentially, that's all we care
Absolutely.
about.
Yeah, and when it comes to cyber and scoping a solution, like we would always engage our services team to come in. Like sometimes they may spend a week, it may be 3 weeks, and they will look at the environment with you. They will look at the data classification, and they will plan your recovery process with you to ensure that the cyber solution is fit for purpose.
Yeah.
And more importantly, test the recovery process that it works and we can bring everything back online with success.
Yeah, 100%. There's no point in having it if it doesn't work right. Um, right, so I just want to talk about simplicity and efficiency now. So we've spoken about all the workloads we can do and how we do it. It sounds super complicated, right? All these things, but actually it's incredibly easy to use, incredibly simple and incredibly efficient as well. So I want to talk a bit a little about legacy or that kind of that VMware centric or whatever we want to call it. But that data protection wasn't designed for Nutanix, right? So when we talk about legacy or the older data protection or that ported across from another platform, what happens is you get this kind of like, I don't want to call it bloat, but you get all these different components because they have to perform all these different roles in different ways because the software doesn't wasn't designed to interact with the platform natively. So we suddenly have backup servers going in, and then we have proxies, maybe even multiple proxies. We then have reporting servers on top of those, and then we have mount servers to do certain workloads, and we have a central backup manager because we've got two or three different environments that we have to then connect together. Then we have a cloud gateway because we want to connect out into some storage in the cloud as well. And then we have to install agents for certain workloads or even all of our workloads, depending on the platform you've chosen. Um, and suddenly you end up with less VMs being able to run on your platform. So you've bought this really cool Nutanix compute platform, and these VMs are now getting taken away because you have to run all these different components on top of that. And then unfortunately, you eventually lose space. So what does that mean? It's highly complex to design, deploy, and manage. So we've got to try and size all of this, make sure we've got all deployed, they're all talking together, and they're all working together. And then you've got to manage all those components and make sure they're upgraded properly and all those types of things. We then siphon resources away from production VMs. So we can't give however many gig of RAM that needs for that VM because guess what? Our backup system's taking it all away from us. It becomes challenging to scale and then to size in the future. So scaling, often people think about scaling up, but also scaling down is important as well. So if you need to scale down, How do you scale down all these components individually? How do you scale them up, all of these individual? Do I need more proxies? Do I need bigger proxies? Do I need more reporting, less reporting? So suddenly you can see how it gets incredibly complex really quickly. And then it becomes incredibly difficult to use. Then you've got different UIs. So you've got a reporting UI. You can then log into a backup manager, then a central backup manager. All these different things just to do data protection, right? It becomes incredibly complex, incredibly frustrating to use. And that's all of that increases cyber risks and performance issues. Over here, if you look at the attack profile or the attack surface we've got here, it's absolutely huge compared to what it should be. And then all these agents are taking resources away as well. And you can see it's not just backup agents as well. If you've got a backup agent, then you've got an MDR or something like that on there as well as an agent. You can see what happened with the CrowdStrike. And I'm not, this isn't me having a CrowdStrike, mistakes happen. But you can see how agents deployed on VMs can cause issues because that's essentially what happened to all those machines that had the CrowdStrike installed, right? There was an issue, a patch got pushed to those agents, and unfortunately it took down those workloads. So mistakes do happen. So if we can minimize the amount of stuff that goes onto our VMs, it's only going to be beneficial. And then if we look at data protection done the modern way, or the HYCU way, as I like to say, we can essentially take all those agents away. As we discussed earlier, we're agentless completely, no agents in our solution whatsoever. We then take all those other components away, engulf them into a single secure black box appliance that you just deploy onto one VM. So suddenly we take all of that complexity away and we do it the HYCU way. So we have a lower TCO. We consume less VMs, we consume less resources, less time, less people. You name it, we consume less of it. It's faster to deploy, discover your apps, protect your apps, recover, and ongoing management becomes faster as well. With incredibly lightweight, so no agents, no proxies, zero impact on workloads, giving you instant protection for all of your workloads. And a limited scale. We scale to any size without really much effort. We're like a shipping container. There's nothing better in the world that shipping cargo around the world than a shipping container. And if you fill that one up, you get another one. But guess what? It's exactly the same. It looks the same. It does exactly the same. That's how HYCU operates. You just add exactly the same thing on again and again and again. So you scale up or scale out. Super simple. And if you're finished with it and you don't need that capacity anymore, take one away, take one away, take one away. Incredibly easy. So you can understand how HYCU achieves simplicity and efficiency. And I want to hand over to Aimie to just do the data domain piece because I know data domain has an incredibly good story around efficiency. So Aimie, back over to you, please.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to efficiency with data domain, out there on the market, we are a leader. If you want to reduce your TCO costs, whether that is on premise and you're looking at environmental costs, or whether it's in the cloud, and you want to reduce your consumption, DD Boost is a protocol that is built into data domain, and it is unique to Dell. So if you look at DD Boost as a tunnel, it's where your data is transferred across that secure tunnel. DD Boost is the protocol that we would use to connect into software, whether that's HYCU, whether it's Dell software, or one of our other partners. DD Boost would always be the preferred method. Why is that? Because we can benefit from deduplication at source. So we are deduping at source, saving on network bandwidth because we don't have to transfer as much data across the network. So far less network traffic, less impact to backup clients as well. Accelerates overall system performance because we're only moving the change blocks. So we don't need to move any data that already exists on the data domain because it's going over, it's checking, it's coming back and it's deduping at source. So it only sends new data across the network, massively reducing storage requirements when it comes to deduplication. Okay, so we have a guarantee at Dell, which is 65 to 1. Now that is based off certain software and numbers. And with HYCU, we recently did a POC, sorry, in the Middle East. And we were getting, after 30 days, around 20 to 1. So if you look at native deduplication or compression within a backup software going direct to a storage repository, you're going to be lucky really to get like 5 to 1. If you look at that from a bigger picture with data domain, you're going to reduce your overall storage consumption, therefore reducing storage cost, power, cooling, footprint. So it really is very powerful when we look at the story of data domain and the value it can bring to the data protection environment.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I was at a customer recently, and we were talking about this, and we put a proposal forward for HYCU and data domain. And when we started looking the around the environmental aspect of it as well, they had, obviously sustainability goals they needed to hit. And I think when we did the calculations, we could reduce their network capacity by 14 times just from the amount of network switches they would need and ports and all that kind of stuff, from a rival competitor's product. And then just the amount of footprint on the data center was, remarkably less. I think it was over half the amount of data, the footprint they needed on the data center to store actually more data. So they were actually reducing their retention times because they couldn't fit any more in their DC, which is obviously putting the business at risk, right? They had less than 2 weeks of backup data on their backup systems because they couldn't fit any more in. And then we decided that we'd pitch to them, and we discussed that, and they were like, oh my God, I can, almost triple my capacity overnight because DD's doing such a great job with deduping and compressing that data down that, I can store even more data for less footprint, which meets my green goals. It's, much more financially beneficial as well. So this really isn't just about, these cool 65 to 1 numbers and, all that stuff that Aimie just spoke about. It really does have like real life benefit, not just from the technical side, but from the business side as well. As I said, sustainability, financials, all those things, you just think of the cost to rack and stack and lease that data center space. You can reduce all of that down massively just by switching out to Haiku and data domain. It's an amazing story, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the reduction you're going to get, it would mean that you will require less shelves, for example, in comparison to a cluster of ready nodes. That means less network ports. You may only need one switch instead of multiple switches. So it all adds up at the end of the day. And this is very, very important when it comes to cloud,
Mm.
because they can creep up very, very quickly, cloud costs, when you start migrating data into the cloud. And having DDVE in the cloud can reduce your costs massively. You can also use committed spend within our cloud providers to utilize the DPS portfolio. And if there is an opportunity out there, we can help you put together a TCO comparison to show the benefits of data domain with HYCU in the cloud versus native protection.
Yeah, I always kind of forget about the DDV option, but it's such a great story. Essentially you're using the same infrastructure, right? You're using the same storage that AWS or Azure or Google has, but you're putting that cool piece of Dell IP in front of it to say, hey, we can make this super efficient and reduce your spend in the cloud, which is an amazing thing. And Haiku can also be bought through those marketplaces as well. So if you do have committed spend, you could buy all of this through your preferred cloud marketplace and really benefit from money that's already spent or committed and get an amazing solution in that as well.
And
So let's go,
another thing just to mention there as
yeah,
well,
go for it.
if you have workloads in the cloud, we provide cyber recovery templates for cloud providers as well. So Azure,
Amazing.
US GCP. And like my view on it is you could have a hybrid setup, you could have on-prem, you could have in the cloud. But when it comes to cyber best practice, it would be if you've got on-premise environments, most likely you're going to keep the cyber recovery vault on premise, when it comes to regulations and of course recovery as well, and how you're going to bring those services back online.
Yeah.
If you've got backup software and data domain in the cloud, you're most likely going to have a cyber recovery vault in the cloud. Again, when it comes to the recovery process, you want it to be quick and smooth and efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Thing everyone forgets about the the cloud vault is that if you have a cloud vault from on-premise, right? Typically one of the first things that the security guys do is cut your network, right? Stop exfiltration of data, and then you've suddenly got a vault up here and your data center down here. And guess what? They can't talk. So
Yeah,
you've got the op guys shouting saying, I need to get my data back. And then you've got security guys saying, yeah, but if I put that network in, we might be exfiltrated, data might be leaving that we don't want to do. So you're currently in this ding dong battle between, wanting to get the business back up to minimize impact, but then on the security side, not risking any more data leakage or any more encryption. So
yeah,
it's a real big thing. And that's where the expertise of Dell and HYCU really do come in. So we know all these like nuances and know these types of things and can come in and kind of say, hey guys, let's play it on the table and see what would work best for you and how we get there. And then moving on from I say moving on actually feeds us really nicely into the security aspect of the platforms as well. So if we look at HYCU and Dell, it's deeply secure, right? So if we look at the HYCU side of things, we have military grade security. You saw that on the first slide I presented. So what does that really mean? Well, we're actually used really heavily in the federal space. So we actually have HYCU installed in many different US federal and other militaries around the world. So we really are super secure, in places that you wouldn't normally find, commercial software or, software that's hard to breach. So we're the only data protection vendor to have a DISA STIG. So this is a defense agency in the USA. So they've essentially certified that HYCU can be used in all these places. And then we have, the regulatory standards FIPS 140-2 and, the NIAP common criteria as well. So you can really rest assured that we are the most secure we can possibly be. And not just, you don't just make it secure, it's also secure out the box, right? So every level of customer can have the same level of security, whether you're a federal customer or whether you're, you know, you know, a manufacturer. Right? It doesn't make a difference. Everyone wants security, and you can get that with HYCU because we are secure out the box. We have a pre-hardened appliance, so you guys don't have to go through a massive list of things and deploy your own OS and then secure that and then deploy the software and secure that. We do it all for you with a simple, virtual appliance. As I said, we're Nutanix verified, and Nutanix use us ourselves, so they trust us. So you guys can trust us as well. But we have multiple different designs and blueprints available, so you know that we're going to work with all those Nutanix systems. And we do have less vulnerabilities. HYCU is 100% Linux based as well, and we make sure we put only the necessary packages into the appliance, so you guys don't have to worry about disabling certain aspects as well. And then we have defense in depth, so we can secure data using immutability, and then we're going to talk about that again in a few slides with data domain. We can find threats with ransomware detection as well, anomaly detection. We keep control over your data. So the great thing about HYCU is that no data ever leaves your customer's control. So even metadata or anything else like that doesn't go to anyone else's cloud and anyone else's tenant unless you want it to. Obviously, you can store it in someone else's cloud and someone else's tenant if you choose that as a customer, but it's not mandatory. It doesn't come to HYCU. We don't analyze metadata or do anything else like that. It stays 100% in your control and you get to decide where your data lives. And we have that easy compliance and reporting built in as well to kind of make sure that you do have all those things engaged. Just simple things like, if you're storing things in object storage, we'll tell you if the bucket is got public access turned on or not. So you know that if you're storing data in there, someone else could be looking at that data as well. Just simple bits and pieces like that. And then again, I'm gonna hand back over to Aimie to go through the data domain security story because it's incredibly strong. When you look at all these things, we could probably spend an hour talking about just this one slide, but when you start looking at the data domain product and how we integrate and DD boost and all those types of things and what that brings to the table from a cyber and security aspect, it really is incredibly strong.
hmm Thank you, Chris.
No
So
worries.
yes, Power Protect Data Manager, data domain, sorry, is the foundation to our data protection portfolio. So yes, data domain has been around for a very long time, since the 1990s. Some may view it as legacy, but to be honest, when it comes to security, I would say proven always wins. And we keep enhancing, improving data domain technology. We're currently working on a scale out architecture where we are containerizing all the services within data domain. So there's lots of exciting things happening within the DPS division. We will release in Q1 an all-flash ready node for data domain as well, which you will be able to use alongside HYCU. Device security, standard hardware root of trust, which you would expect to see in any physical server or appliance nowadays, and secure boot. Data immutability. We have two types of immutability on data domain, which is called retention lock. We have compliance mode and we have governance mode. All of these features you see in front of you are just included out of the box. There's no additional cost. You either turn them on or they're already turned on by default. Um, when it comes to immutability, the governance mode is your standard out of the box Linux command, which locks the file on the back end. If you happen to get root access, you could revert that lock. So, in other words, trust your admin. And that's what you will see. A lot of the other competitors out there on the market today use this type of immutability. When it comes to compliance, it's a different kettle of fish. So it's very, very stringent on security. It's a higher level of security. You need two accounts to be able to even try and change any settings when it comes to compliance, and you have to be physically in front of the data domain. If, for example, you locked yourself out of the data domain, you couldn't get in with a security officer, or you changed the time on the data domain and it automatically shut the file system down because it was a security precaution, you would have to ring support to get access if compliance mode is enabled. When it comes to our cyber recovery vaults, we always enable compliance mode. That is best practice for us. And yeah, I always say to customers, like when you enable it, be very, very careful what retention you set and make sure that you keep your password very safe for the security officer and the sysadmin because it can be very difficult to break into the box. End-to-end encryption, we encrypt our data at every point in time. So we encrypt at source, in transit, and at rest. We are compliant with FIPS 1402, and we provide KMS support if you wish to integrate with an external KMS server. User and identity. I would expect to see this across all of the major backup solutions and storages now. So you've got role-based access, managed MFA, multi-factor authentication. I've been talking all day about different things that are coming up in my head. Security officer and IJAC as well. On the data domain, we have something that we call dual authentication. So that means that you have to separate duties. And if you need to run a certain command, for example, disabling immutability or disabling encryption, you have to have two accounts to be able to do that. So you have to have the sysadmin and the security officer as well. We also have a unique feature to data domain, which is the secure system clock, NTP clock, and that controls any tampering when it comes to the NTP service on the data domain. So say, for example, a hacker did get into the data domain, they got access in, and the first thing they're going to try to do is revert the time on the backup so they can delete them. Now, with the secure system clock, this will automatically disable services. If it sees that there's been any change to the clock or a drift in time sync, it will pick that up automatically. The file system is built on a DIA, for short, Data Invulnerability Architecture. So this was built from the ground up from day one. And a lot of you will be very, very familiar with this, and I'll go into it in a bit more detail. This is amazing when you look at some of the cyber attacks that get logged with our support team and our incident response team, how they can recover volumes, even if all the backup data has been deleted, snapshots have been deleted. You know, it is truly a very powerful message. And of course, our transport protocol, DD Boost. We do have other protocols available, NFS, CIFS, BTL, but DD Boost would always be our preferred option.
Amazing, yeah. I mean, a massive amount of technology there that Amy's just spoken about. And one thing that I like to Amy to explain to me is, the durability, because I know this is a thing that people always wonder. You store your data, You never know if your data's good until you have to recover it, right? Obviously, we can test. Obviously, we will sit here and say, yeah, test 100% of your data every day, and you guarantee it's going to be fine. But with HYCU, we have ways that we can automate testing and validation of data. But there's always going to be a certain degree of you're not going to restore every single backup point for every single VM or workload you have, right? It's kind of impractical to do all of that on every single day. Um, so I know that the data domain has this kind of like this check, right, that makes sure the data that's stored is right, if you will. Can you explain that for me a little bit more, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when it comes to cyber resiliency, integrity is key. So ensuring that we keep integrity across the data. So within the data domain, it has its own invulnerability architecture, ensures that you can recover what you back up every time, recovered correctly, stored correctly, and stays correctly. So there are verification checks that are completed on the data domain, and it runs these maintenance checks itself in the background. It's continuously checking the data, inline data verification. So it's verifying the integrity of the data and continuous fault detection and self-healing. So it stays correct through the journey that the data sits on the data domain until it's expired. 100% data validation from end to end, industry exclusive. Data errors are corrected immediately from persistent memory, including in-flight data through DD Boost. New data and metadata never overwrite existing data. We will always clone, create a copy. Continuous fault detection and self-healing of data stored on disk. The file system is always consistent due to an append-only architecture. Data is validated and verified to be correct, even at the point of origin when using the DD Boost protocol. And one other thing I'd just add there is when it comes to our cyber recovery solution with the cyber recovery software, we are taking a point in time snapshot of your data sets, your backup. Now, it's just a snapshot, so it doesn't consume an awful lot of capacity, so that's no worry to us. And it's a read-only snapshot as well. So you have layers and layers and layers of security. So if your backups were compromised, you have snapshots on top of there, and then you also have this underlying architecture to protect you as well.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. And you can see the security story kind of speaking for itself, right? Others in the marketplace they do data validation, but I know certain competitors they'll do 20% data validation, right? So you could have 80% of your data not good, whereas at least with HYCU and data domain, you've got 100% data validation, which is absolutely amazing. So when that all boils down, me and Amy have spoken quite a lot about a lot of different technologies and a lot of different ways of working and those types of things. But what is the value? So we can achieve instant ROI. So with a data domain, even like a DDV, for instance, you can spin that up super quick in the cloud. HYCU, I think one of my colleagues' records is like less than 30 minutes to get HYCU up and running and protecting workloads. So imagine that you can achieve instant ROI with something in the cloud, HYCU spinning, Nutanix delivered, and then you can get those backups, almost instantly into wherever you're going from onto. We've got that low cost of ownership. So no agents, no proxies for backup or DR. That the efficiency that data domain brings in storing huge amounts of data in an incredibly small footprint, that gives a massive boost to the cost of ownership in terms of reducing that and reducing that financial burden. We minimize disruption. So we have HYCU has the fastest possible recovery in Nutanix workloads, and we have a little question later on that we'll cover in a minute, Amy. But about RTO. But we can minimize that disruption and make sure actually data is available to recover. Making sure that a backup that happens, or sorry, a restore that happens fast but isn't validated or isn't worth it is it might as well take a minute or two longer and it actually work than have to do it 4 or 5 times over. We can simplify that compliance, so we can make sure we have the SLA assurance with built-in reporting as well. So we can actually, from a HYCU standpoint, we can tell you how long your backups are going to take to recover as well, which is amazing technology. We hope you achieve resilience. We've spoken a lot about cyber on this webinar, but hardened, secured, and battle tested. I think Aimie mentioned earlier that proven is best. We have proof that this works. We have proof that we can recover people from ransomware. You know, there's nothing more to say. We can help you reduce risk. We can give you that freedom of choice to move your workloads anywhere, anytime. And that's not just from a hypervisor or anything else like that. We support Nutanix, but also multiple other hypervisors as well. We support all three clouds, but you could move your data from, on-premise data domain into a cloud data domain, just like Amy's explained as well, or tier that off into ECS or somewhere else into the cloud as well. So you've got options and availability there for you. We can help you unlock the efficiencies in your team. Save time and resources in deploying, designing, architecting, managing. All of that stuff is super simple with HYCU. I like to coin it as a zero architecture approach. You don't need to architect HYCU. You just buy it, you put it in place, and away it goes. It just does its job. Exactly like the shipping container analogy I used earlier. You buy it, you put it in place, and it does what it's been designed to do. And then the peace of mind. The only vendor with a DISA-STIG, FIPS 140-23, NIAP, and we're the only vendor who supports VTPM for Nutanix workloads as well. And then I want to run you past the HYCU and Dell promise. So this is our promise to you. Your backup operations will take significantly less time. You will free up critical resources from your estate because we're not using all of those resources for backup software. You will recover faster. As I mentioned, we have the fastest possible recovery for Nutanix workloads. You can always count on HYCU to stay aligned to Nutanix. So wherever they go and innovate next, we'll be right behind them, making sure data is protected in all of those new experiences and new places they store data. And you can protect all critical applications, not just the VMs. Typically, when I go and speak to customers about Nutanix and they say, "Oh, this vendor," I say, "Hey, were they just talking? They talking Nutanix or are they talking AHV?" And 99% of the time, Nutanix equals AHV in most people's world. That's just a subset of what they can do. And Nutanix have a massive estate that they offer. So making sure you're protecting all of those. And obviously, we have then the NPS score, so we give you the best possible customer experience across that as well. And then I wanted to just talk quickly. I don't think I've got time for a demo. I think we've spoken for too long, which is unfortunate. But there is a recording of the webinar that happened yesterday for America that had a demo on. But we also have loads of demos available online that you can go and see the software as well and try it out for yourself. But what percentage of your estate is actually Nutanix or on-premise hypervisor, right? We had this discussion earlier, and it could be 50%, it could be 100%, it could be 10%, right? But as we look at the modern data estate, this is typically what I see from a customer. Okay, they're not using all of these services, but they're using one or two from box one, four or five or 10 from box two, and then even more from box three in the SaaS applications world. So understanding that you need a platform that consolidates your data protection under one platform, this is what HYCU can do for you. So we can offer everything under the hybrid cloud. So we've been talking about Nutanix today, but we cover VMware, we cover Azure Stack HCI, soon Hyper-V as well, all the different file servers you can imagine. So, the Dell, is it PowerStore? Your files. I think it is
Yes,
PowerStore. Yeah,
yes.
I get confused with PowerStore, PowerMax, and all that. But PowerStore. So files we can cover that as well in the cloud. All the not just the IaaS instances in the cloud. Your EC2 and your Azure instances. Of course we cover those as well because everybody does. But the things that people maybe don't think to protect. So AWS Lambda, parameter stores, AWS KMS, DynamoDB, all those idiosyncrasies, all those small bits and pieces that actually make up a whole solution. Without them, the whole solution wouldn't work. So we need to back up all of that data as well. And then you start looking at all the SaaS applications. So yes, most other vendors are going to cover Microsoft 365 and Salesforce. Probably they're going to be the two that they cover. But when you look at the amount of SaaS apps that HYCU covers versus the rest of the market, we really do blow everyone else away. And we can, put all that data onto the Dell product, so the cloud and the SaaS straight on directly onto Dell ECS, or we can go into for the hybrid cloud workloads into data domain and DDV as well. So we really do have that whole story from start to finish for your whole modern data estate. This isn't all of the workloads we cover. There's so many more. So, go onto our website, have a look. I'm sure you'll find workloads that you go, "Oh, I didn't know I needed to back that up. I didn't know that was something that I needed to do, or I didn't know it was even available on the market to be backed up," right? So, we can start looking at all those different workloads. I think one of the biggest ones for me is I'm a real passion for that. I came from, the Active Directory on premises, and it was almost the first thing that you protected in your new backup solution, right? Let's get Active Directory. Let's see how that gets tested and how we restore that. How do we do that? Whole products were built around Active Directory restore. And now that's moved to Entra ID. People don't care about it anymore, and they go, "Oh, it's fine. It's in the cloud." Or Okta, for instance, they go, "Oh, it doesn't matter. All that identity management's in the cloud now." Guess what? We still have to do it. It's probably the most critical piece of data that you have. It's probably incredibly tiny. It's just config files and policies and those types of things. But it's incredibly important data. Who can access what is incredibly important. So making sure we're backing that up properly as well. So I was going to do a demo here, but we have got a few questions and we only got a few minutes left. So I'll skip the demo for today. I'll do a quick CTA. So if you want to experience this for yourself, please go and try HYCU for free. You get a free trial. Use the QR code. If you type in HYCU free trial, you'll get to the page straight away from any search engine or AI, whatever you're using to find your web links now. You'll find that. Yeah, try it for yourself. Don't believe what me and Aimie just saying. Real try it for yourself. You can, I mean, you can believe what we say, but sometimes we have, I chat around for a long time, but try it for yourself. See what you find out, and we love to hear back from you from everything else. So, Aimie, we have
Yeah.
a few questions. That I'd like
Just
to. Oh,
just
go
on
on.
the free trial,
Yep.
same applies for our Data Domain Virtual Edition. So if you want to test it with HYCU, you can download it, and there's a 90-day eval for any of our DPS products, whether that's in the marketplace or it's on premise. You choose.
Amazing. Perfect. So we have a couple of questions. So, how would the dedupe compare to backup software sustained deduplication? I don't know what that means. Hopefully you do.
It will come down to whether we're using data domain, and I'm assuming from the other questions from Adam, this is around data domain, and it will it will come into the calculation on the data that's going into the box. So like always, it's gonna be hugely around what data are you backing up? How much data are you backing up? The retention? Are you tiering any of it off to a different storage type? The more you keep in the active tier, the better dedupe you'll get. One integration that is on the roadmap, which will also help with HYCU, dedupe, is virtual synthetic full backups, which is supported with data domain. So today it will be a full and incremental. We're still going to get great dedupe, but then when we integrate and we support virtual synthetic fulls, we'll be doing a lot better when it comes to the data reduction figures. Difficult to compare against Commvault and Net Backup because every estate is different. We can't give guarantees for dedupe. We would go through a sizing exercise and we will be able to produce those figures for you off the workload information you provide.
Yeah, and from our kind of testing with dev and things like that, we've seen very promising figures. Obviously, I don't know exactly what they are, but I don't think Dell would have moved forward with us if it didn't work very well with data domain. We were seeing really poor dedupe figures. It's one of the biggest selling points of data domain is their data efficiency story. So we've got very good figures from our testing and everything else moving forward. So, but yeah, it's obviously down to the data and what else. But I would say at least comparable, if not going to be up there. So. And then this one's a bit of a weird, not a weird one, but what are the challenges in regard to RTO, their historical experience with DD not being very performant in recovery time? I've actually used DD and I've not experienced that myself. I've always had decent recovery times. I'll take it from the HYCU point of view, and then Aimie, I'll fling it to your way to kind of discuss about the DD point of view. So we have two aspects with HYCU for RTO. So one aspect is for Nutanix workloads and other hybrid cloud workloads, we actually can keep a copy on Nutanix snapshots itself. So if you didn't need to go into the data domain to pull data back and you're keeping that snapshot, we call it fast restore. We can actually restore within almost, within seconds. It's an instant recovery back from a snapshot. They are HYCU owned and operate snapshots. They're not marked inside of Prism as Nutanix owned. They're HYCU owned. So you can recover almost instantly from Nutanix workloads back directly into Nutanix. And then on the second part of the RTO story, HYCU will actually tell you how long the data is going to take to recover, and that'll be from data domain in this instance as well. So you can know from the policy, so inside of a HYCU policy, you can set how long you want the backups to, how quickly you want the backups to recover to. So you can have a gold standard which says, I need to be back up and running in 2 hours. You set that in the policy, assign your workloads to it, and if anything cannot meet that, it will flag and say, hey, by the way, this workload here cannot be recovered in your policy. You need to look at it. So you know it doesn't matter. It's never going to be a surprise to you. Never going to be, oh, data domain's being slow today. It's, oh no, we know what the recovery point in time is, or sorry, the recovery time objective is, because HYCU's monitoring that on an ongoing basis and flagging it in real time if anything changes and slips out of policy. And then over to you, Aimie. I know that data domain's got a great story about flash tiers and all flash and all that kind of stuff. You can you can be able to cover.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see the challenges in regards to RTO. I'd be interested to see what those challenges were, what backup software was in use with data domain, because we have a very performant storage appliance when it comes to data domain. And if you are backing up like hundreds, thousands of VMs at one time, the multi-streaming will kick in and all your backups are running parallel. It is very, very impressive. So it'd be good to understand what those challenges were. We do have a flash tier in all of the data domain models out there today. We introduced that about 5 to 6 years ago, and they are used for restores. And we have just released, well, it will be officially announced on the 9th of April, our all flash ready node. So if there is a requirement to have a performance tier for a particular use case, maybe it has a very high read on the data domain, then we can also offer that as well. So there's a question around DB2 and SAP HANA. Do you support DB2 and SAP HANA, Chris, or is it on the roadmap?
I'd have to double check. We have 80 odd, 85 or 80 something plus integrations. I'd have to check those two. I'm pretty sure SAP HANA is a yes. DB2 I'm not sure about, but I'll make sure we try and get the answer across to the person on there. Um, and then is there a DD Boost cloud provider? I know we've gone over, so we'll do one last question. Is there a DD Boost cloud provider in Riyadh? I don't know if AWS, Azure, or Google have regions in Riyadh. I would imagine if they don't, then no is going to be the option. But I'd imagine if not, then there'll be one coming soon because they're looking to expand in all areas, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to the cloud provider and the regional support that they provide, because DDVE, which includes the DD Boost protocol, is available from the marketplace. So it would depend on the cloud provider that you choose. Or you could download the software and you could deploy it within a private cloud, if it needs to stay within that region.
yeah. And the same, I know I said one more, but I'm gonna do it because this person asked the same with the follow-up question. And what's the ideal bandwidth link to have DD Boost hosted in the cloud? That's obviously going to be data dependent on how much you're backing up and how often you're backing up. The simple thing is going to be with DD Boost, it's going to do all the deduplication at source, so it's going to be much less than any other way of doing it, right?
Yeah, and it depends, it's that question, isn't it? Why are you sending your backups to the cloud? Is it for a second copy? It's purely a DR copy. And how much data are you going to send across the WAN? Because if you're looking at sending like 3 petabytes of data over a 300 megabit link, you've got no chance.
Yep.
So it's going to come down to, again, the amount of data, the bandwidth that you have available, and the window as well.
Yep.
And that's would all be completed by ourselves when we size a solution for you.
Perfect. Amazing. So we have gone over. I appreciate people's time. I don't try and go over, but thank you very much for staying with us. I'll finish it promptly by saying thank you to Aimie and thank you for everyone for joining us. You'll get a copy of the slides afterwards and the recording. But thank you very much. I hope to see you on the next one and have a good rest of the day for everyone. Cheers, Aimie. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Chris. Bye, everyone.